Hey guys, welcome to the Dream Chasers Ground Zero podcast. Our goal with this show is to equip you with the knowledge, skills, and even connections you need to get your dreams off the ground. Today's guest is the CEO of SimBull, the stock market for sports. SimBull is the first platform that allows fans to buy and sell shares of sports teams just like they would trade stocks on RobinHood. Under his leadership, SimBull was selected to the Techstars Sports Tech Accelerator, the #1 sports tech accelerator program in the world with an acceptance rate under 1%. He is a former actuarial analyst for Allianz Health, where he created and invested in financial products and was also selected to the Minnesota Under 25 Entrepreneurs List in 2021 for the work he has done growing SimBull. Tune in for some valuable conversations today about why it's easier to take risks while you're young. Just because you do it differently doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. And when you knock on the door of opportunity, don't be surprised when work answers. If you're a young entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur looking to start and build the early stages of your business, today's interview is for you. And make sure to stick around for our guest's advice to their ground zero self. As always, if there's anything throughout the interview that resonates with you, please leave it in the comments below. Odds are that it resonates with someone else too. And if you leave a comment that way, it's more likely to stick with you. Now, without further ado, let's get to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. Today we have with us Kenneth Giles. Kenneth, would you just mind sharing with us a little bit about who you are and what you do? And we'll follow that up with the story of your personal Ground Zero moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, Aaron. I'm excited to share with the audience of young-minded, young entrepreneurs, sort of my story and how I got to where I am. So my background currently, I am co-founder and CEO of a sports tech startup called SimBull Sports Exchange. We are creating a direct-to-consumer mobile app that is a stock market for sports. So sports betting is on the rise, stock market investing is on the rise. And SimBull is a combination of both those, creating an app that allows users to invest in shares of their favorite sports teams, similar to how they would invest in companies in the stock market. So we launched about a year and a half ago, and that's what I've been doing for the past 18 months.
That's so awesome, man. I just think it's a cool concept. So I'm definitely excited to hear a little bit more about that as well. But we'll work our way into that. Shifting from there, would you just mind sharing with us that story of your personal ground zero moment and some of the things that you learned from that to help you get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting with just a little bit more background. So I actually graduated from the University of St. Thomas in 2020. St. Thomas is a small liberal arts school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Graduated with a degree in actuarial science, which for some of your listeners who don't know what actuaries do, it's a combination of investments, math, statistics. And then after graduation, I started working at an insurance company, which most actuaries do. So I was working for an insurance company in Minneapolis, pricing and developing life insurance products, annuity products. What a lot of people call pretty boring stuff. If you're a math nerd like me, it is pretty interesting work actually. So that's what I did right after college. Got a good job, started paying the bills, started kind of moving on from that transition that a lot of people go through from sort of college life to what we call adulthood or growing up, all that stuff, working a 9 to 5. That's when the ground zero story really started. So graduating in 2020, if a lot of your listeners have graduated in the last couple of years, they probably had a very similar experience, right? They got a job or they struggled finding work, because I know a lot of people were out of the workforce for a while. But when they did find a job, they were working from home, right? There wasn't a lot of human connection. They weren't in the office. For me personally, talking about my story, I actually really loved the company I used to work for. I interned there for 2 years in college. Loved the people, loved the work, loved everything about the career going into it. And then when the pandemic hit, started feeling a lot more isolated, working from home, not being in the office, not working with other people. And that's when it really started to hit me like, is this what I want to do for the next 40 years of my life? Right. I was telling this story, go from a work office to a home office. I was sitting in a 1-bedroom apartment, sitting in my office bedroom for, 10 hours a day working and then sleeping and doing whatever, all in the same room. And it finally hit me as like, is this all there is to it? Like, is this what I'm going to do for the next 40 years until I retire? I'm going to wake up, I'm going to sit at my desk, I'm going to type into a keyboard, I'm going to get an output, and I'm going to send it to my boss to see if he approves or not. Right. And just on repeat, day after day. And it really got me to thinking, like, is that all there is? And if that's all there is, then okay, accept that and move on. But I didn't think that was it, right? I didn't think that's what we were meant to be put on the earth for. I didn't think that was my calling to sit in there and get an output for every day for 40 years. And that's when the idea of SimBull really started to resonate in my mind, of this idea of, hey, what if we created this really cool platform for sports fans that allow them to make money off their sports knowledge? Because that's what I like to do in my free time is, play fantasy sports, play, sports gambling, do different stuff watching sports. So this idea of SimBull started to resonate, and I started thinking about it more and more and week on week. And it finally hit me of like, hey, if I'm going to make a jump to do something really cool with my life or do something that I'm really passionate about, do something for me, now is the perfect time to do it. So in January of 2021, I'd been working full time for that company for about 6 months, 7 months. I decided to take the leap. So I quit, started SimBull, and we were off and running after that.
That's sweet, man. No, I love it. I love that you were willing to kind of make that sacrifice, if you will, to step away from that comfort zone to go pursue something new. Just kind of following up on that point. I mean, like just like you mentioned, we as young individuals, students, young entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call it, we have, I guess what you could say, like little life experience right now, where we don't really have families built yet. We don't really have, in some cases, we don't have a job or bills to pay yet for, depending on your situation. So like saying yes to opportunities now is an awful lot easier because you don't have all of that like life baggage kind of keeping you from making those decisions on a day-to-day basis, where like we carry a little bit less risk, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah,
that was one of the biggest things for me, making that jump was I thought through all the scenarios, right? I'm a very analytical person, right? I thought through all the scenarios. Okay, what happened in the best, medium, worst case scenario? What's the outcome if I do this versus this? And my conclusion was, okay, if I quit my job now, I go try this for a year, 6 months, 18 months, 2 years. If it doesn't work out, great. Now, instead of working 41 years for this company, I'm going to work 40 years for this company, right? Right. There was always a fallback plan where I can go back and be a 9 to 5, making my good salary and enjoying family life and all that stuff. So what I decided was, hey, why not take the risk now when I'm 24, 25 years old, try it for a couple of years. That way, if I look back, even if it doesn't work out, if I'm 65 years old, I'll be like, hey, at least I tried it, right? That was really fun 2 years. I gave it a go. I built something for me. Right now we've got just over 1,000 users. If that's all we ever get, I'm like, man, 1,000 people had fun playing something that I helped develop, I helped create, right? That's exciting. Now, I hope we get to 1 million users, 10 million users, et cetera. But even looking back on it, I was like, man, at least I did something really, really cool. And I can always go back to, what I was doing beforehand if that's what I need to do.
No, 100%. And I love like one of like I guess it was like a subtle point you made. I don't know if you necessarily came out and said it, but in taking that opportunity and choosing to make that jump, you kind of realize a lot of different things, both about what you did and didn't like about the job you were in, and what you do and don't like about the opportunity you're now pursuing. And I think that that's something that's really important too, which, like you said, you're very analytical. So you like thought all that stuff out, but a lot of us don't. Like we kind of get caught up. We're either stuck and we never move, or we go and we don't even think. And in some cases that works, but I'm not going to claim that it works every time. But anyway, but in order to do that, like what you did is you put yourself into a situation that challenged you both mentally and emotionally, like jumping into a new scenario where you can say, I'm doing this thing for me. I'm really going to put myself out there and I'm going to pursue this thing. And, I really hope that I build something that other people enjoy. And I hope that I can run with this. And, like it's those situations where you learn to feel uncomfortable, anxious, scared, and keep going anyway, I think is where, like all of that growth happens. And really like, that's the best part about the position you're in, is that we're not risking a whole lot right now. So like you mentioned, if I try this for 1, 2, maybe even 3 years, you're still in your 20s and you have your whole life to go. And you can pick up the pieces, over the next 60 years,
Yeah, it was actually, that's a really interesting point because, I talked to a lot of people who are, last couple of years of college, and they're like, man, like, congrats on making the jump. That's so excited. Like I'm just not able, I can't do it. It's like, well, that's fine, right? And there's a time and a place for everything. And if you're not in a position to be able to make that jump or take the risk, definitely don't do that, right? And I wouldn't. It was funny right before I made the jump, I've been dating my girlfriend for the last couple of years, and before I quit, obviously I talked to her about this. I'm like, hey, like, what do you think about this? Like, is this something do you think I can do? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's something that we should do together, right? Because it does take a lot of toll on her, right? My salary went down quite a bit. I'm working longer hours for less pay. I'm, engrossed in this for 12, 15 hours a day at a time. So it does take a lot of toll on the people around you. So I obviously consulted her beforehand, and she goes, honestly, you should do it now before we get married or have kids or anything like that, because what's the risk right now, right? She has a great job. She's paying her own bills. We don't have anybody to support, together ourselves. So being able to take the risk made a lot of sense now versus, if you're 35 or 40 and you have kids in elementary school, it's a lot harder to make those big jumps or take those big risks. So the timing just made a lot of sense. And I obviously owe her a lot for the support that she gave, because that is really important. If you're going to make a big jump like that, is having family, friends, significant other around you that can help support you for sure.
No, absolutely. I believe I saw a tweet yesterday. I think it was Brendan Burchard that said, I believe it said, when you knock on the door of opportunity, don't be surprised when work answers. And that's kind of what that whole thing just made me think of. We're like, I'm ready to make this jump. I'm ready to make this change. And then boom, longer hours, less pay, strained relationship, different things like that. There's a whole bunch of challenges that get thrown at you all at once that you have to learn to juggle and, work through.
It's a huge adjustment. Right. So when I was working for this company that had 3,000 employees, right, if I didn't know something, if I didn't know how to do something, I would go to my boss. He'd either tell me how to do it, or he'd say, hey, go talk to so-and-so. They've done something like this before. They can help you. Right. And then if you're still stuck, then you get some more help. Right. There's always a fallback plan. With SimBull, if I don't know how to do something, if my co-founder doesn't know how to do something, if our employee doesn't know how to do something, it's on us to figure it out. And we're stuck until we do figure it out or figure out a way around it. So it's actually it's been a huge learning experience, but it's been a really great experience. Probably a lot more stress, but I would call it a lot more good stress, because it causes you, I would say there's two types of stress in my mind, like a really bad stress that kind of paralyzes you, and a good stress that pushes you to overcome. And being the founder of a startup has been a really good stress, right? Because it forces you to learn a ton. It forces you to go a million miles an hour. And if you don't know something, you're the one that has to figure out. There's no one else in the world who can do it for you. Not saying that there's other people that can't help you, mentors, experience stuff like that. It ultimately falls on your shoulders. And that's been a really, really, really great experience. That when you said, when you knock on the door of opportunity, don't be surprised if work answers. It's been a ton of work, but it's a really, really enjoyable work, because it's something that I'm really passionate about and want to be the best at, essentially. Want to build something really, really cool.
Right, absolutely. And I love the point that you just made as well, that I kind of want to segue off of here just for a second, that, you mentioned when you're in a big corporation or a company, you can ask people within the workplace for help. But obviously we've all heard the phrase, your network is your net worth. In the terms of entrepreneurship, I like to think of it a little bit differently, just that the world is your workplace. So that the people that how intentional you are about building that network is the amount of people you can go ask for help when you don't know something, where the number of people that you've interacted with and associated with that may have knowledge in those different areas, that is your work family, if you will, that you could potentially reach out to if you don't know things like that. But that depends kind of how intentional you are about building those connections. So that was just kind of something I wanted to say for a second. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. The network is a really, really powerful tool. I would say in college, I was not a good networker, right? Your college puts on all these events like, hey, go listen to this seminar, right? Meet these people, add them on LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't really involved with that. I'm a pretty outgoing person, but this whole idea of networking was like, I don't really need to do that. As soon as I got involved with SimBull and the startup and being in the startup world, it's amazing how much asking for help from your connections is an absolute lifesaver, right? Even how we got connected, Aaron. I met Adam 2 weeks ago, and I said, hey, you've got this Twitch stream. We're looking to get on podcasts to share the SimBull story, to share my story. Do you know anyone that'd be a good fit? And he responds back, hey, you should talk to Aaron. Then when I talk to you, you say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so and so-and-so. And the network just builds that way. So it is a really, really powerful tool to not use for your own advantage or to manipulate, but to be involved with and provide value to both, receive value and give value to your network.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of bouncing back to the story though that we were talking about. One of the things that you mentioned yesterday, I don't know if you 100% said it today, but I wrote it down and you said it yesterday, so that's why I know, was that the longer you stayed in that position, the harder you thought it was going to become to leave. And I did kind of want to touch on that just for a second, as far as what the emotions were behind that statement and everything coming into that, just for making that leap into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. So got to be 100% honest. I actually took that quote from someone I used to work with at that company. Because when I was trying to get advice on, hey, if this is my idea, should I go jump on it? And I had a mentor in that company who told me that quote, right? The longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. And I thought about that quite a bit. And I think the motivation really comes from comfort level and sort of that risk assessment that we were talking about, right? Out of college, you're used to, balling on a budget, right? You're used to not spending a lot of money on rent or clothes or nice things, right? You're used to living, pretty tight on the budget. And that's what startup life is. When you first get a startup, you are, shoestringing it. You do not have a big salary, right? You do not have a bunch of money to, spend on clothes or houses or rent or stuff like that. And the farther you get removed, I would say, from college, right? If I was in that position for, say, 5 or 10 years as opposed to 6 months, I've been like, man, do I really want to give up, my promotion? Do I really want to give up my salary? Do I want to give up this style of living that I've adopted over the last 5 to 10 years? That's way different than the style of living of a startup company and what goes along with being a founder of a startup. So I think that was the biggest thing. And then also, like we talked about previously, the risk factors of, the longer you stay there, right, the more responsibility you have, the more connections you have, the more roots you've already laid down. And it gets a lot harder to make that jump into the unknown as it is when you're, 23, 24, 25, just out of college, trying to figure out the world, trying to gain experiences, trying to learn a bunch of stuff. It's a lot easier to take those, call it bigger risks or bigger jumps.
No, 100%. I mean, and just following up with really a couple more quotes that I've heard from some mentors as well, is like success loves speed and doubt increases with inaction. And the way that I kind of interpret those in this exact scenario is that, like, the longer you stayed in that position, the harder it was to leave, because you had that idea and you have this level of comfort with that company, with the benefits, with the salary, with all the things that come with that corporate position. And then you have this idea to go do something else, but the longer you hold yourself from doing that, the more reasons you're going to come up with as to why you shouldn't go do that, or that you're not fit to go do that because you're in this position, you're really good at this, you're doing all these things. That's where, like, I think that whole thing kind of just becomes this little, like, blender of, I don't even know what to call it, but either way, like, your mind just gets confused and then no action gets taken and you end up staying in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great quote. I've actually haven't heard that. The doubt, what was it? The doubt increases with inaction. That's a really interesting point, because I hadn't really thought about this previously until just now. But I was thinking back to when I was still working full time and when I was trying to figure out if SimBull was a good idea that we should pursue on the side. I was doing 2 full-time jobs, right? I was going to my 9-to-5 job, 8 hours a day, working hard, doing my normal duties. I would get off at 5, and then I would work 8 hours on SimBull on the side, right? So I was working these full 16-hour days. And that's what really gave me the confidence of, like, oh my gosh, imagine what I could do, not just work on SimBull 8 hours a day. What if we worked on SimBull 16 hours a day, right? That was my addiction. That was my passion. And the whole idea of, I started getting more and more confident with every action that I took. So it's almost the opposite, right? The longer I worked on SimBull for 8-9 hours a day while I was already working a full-time job, the more it gave me confidence, like, oh my gosh, if this is what I'm doing in my free time, right? This is my time off, and this is what I'm choosing to do. Why not make this a career, or see if we can make this a career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where, I mean, so many people, like, that I know like, I just graduated in May. I know a lot of people that are, like, rightfully so, concentrated on getting a good job.
Yep.
And, finding some stability in things right now, and, falling into a routine, kind of getting things level out before trying to build. And I totally understand that. But I also think that a lot of us overlook that exact point that you just made, that you have the opportunity to pursue something you're that passionate about, something that you're addicted to. And I don't know, I think a lot of us, like, fall into that blender, like, that we just spoke of, because we find that position that we enjoy just enough, that pays us just enough, that provides us the stability that we want, gives us all the things that we were asking for. And then we never go pursue that other thing that we may have thought of, or that we may be passionate about, because now we fall into that, here we are, this like enough mindset with the current position, and then we stay, and then we never get out of it, and that's where I think, like, I feel like I just see that so often. I mean, I see it, like, with like some of my parents' friends. I see it with people that like may have had an idea, but just never went for it. And then like, because they stayed, it just never happened.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, and it's interesting, right? Listening to, Gary Vee speak, right? These motivational billionaires that have had a lot of success, and they talk about, finding your, right? Simon Sinek, start with why, right? Finding your person, finding your passion. I think there's a lot of people that their passion is, hey, I want to get a great job. I want to get a stable job. I want to work 9 to 5. I have hobbies outside of work that I want to pursue, right? Whether it be, sporting leagues or art or whatever, or family or traveling, right? There's a lot of people, my brother's one of them, that he works his job and then he travels, right? And that's his passion. That's what he likes to do. So that's what he does, which is great. I think the important thing is to figure out what you want, right? If you want that 9 to 5 and have those hobbies, that's awesome, right? That's a great career. There's a lot of people I know that are doing that. It just wasn't for me. That wasn't going to make me happy. And once I realized that, then you have a lot more confidence to make that jump of, hey, whether this, succeeds into $1 billion company, which we really hope it can, or whether this, flops in 3 years, these have been the best 18 months of my life working on something that I'm really passionate about. So once you find that passion, it's a lot easier to make that jump and have the confidence to kind of go out and do it.
No, absolutely. I think that so many of us really get caught up in this, like you just mentioned, like the billionaire speakers and stuff, and the way that they talk about the way they take action, the way that they do things. I think a lot of us get caught up in this like belief that we have to do it like they did it, or we're not going to do it at all, when that's really not the case. I mean, and this is something that I've struggled with here in just the last few months, where like I can still be passionate about this thing and still be chasing this passion without necessarily working at it the same way that they did it. Where like, I can tell you right now, like, no, I'm not dedicating 16 hours to my thing per day, but I am making incremental steps towards that goal. So like, it's all more like, I'm not saying don't do that, because I think that's great. I really do. Yeah. But it's more so about like finding what works for you, like at this point in time. Where like me, I'm putting the time aside to do the work on it that I can, while like pursuing everything else. Where like I just landed this job, I'm just kind of getting all that stuff started off, and I've been training like crazy on all kinds of stuff for that. So that's taking up a whole bunch of time. But like I'm keeping that passion, that addiction, if you will, like present. Where like right now, no, I can't devote all my time to it, but it's still here. I'm still putting some work to it. I'm still like, what's the word? Like watering the plant, if you will. I'm still feeding the seed, or whatever metaphor you want to use. But like I said, it's all about kind of finding what works for you, where like, don't necessarily feel like you have to put 40 hours a week on top of your job in on this thing right away. Like find what works for you, fit it to your schedule, and just like start, let a little bit of momentum build first, then worry about that stuff a little bit down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really great point, right? It's not this whole idea of these billionaires talking about like, oh, I only sleep 5 hours a night, right? I'm up 20 hours. I'm working harder than everyone, blah, blah, blah. Like that might work for them. That doesn't work for me, right? I need my sleep. I need 8 hours of sleep to be able to function the next day, right? But I think what you make a great point about these, whether it be these little sacrifices or little pockets of time, like, hey, instead of watching an hour of TV at the end of the night, I'm only gonna watch half an hour. I'm gonna spend 30 minutes just writing down these thoughts about this idea that I have, or I'm gonna spend 30 minutes creating content, or I'm gonna make 30 minutes listening to this extra podcast. That might, right. It could be whatever time that you have left over to follow your passion. I think is kind of the important step of taking that first action to get to where you want to be in the long run. Yeah,
absolutely. I love that. And I think that like one of the things that I can admit held me up a little bit, and I think that a lot of the rest of us, and a lot of others of us also kind of get caught up on, is this like our environment, where like I can say when I kind of first kind of like stepped out from what I considered my comfort zone, where I was before, like I was extremely lost, and I didn't have anybody else that was thinking the way that I was. And it was very much kind of like you mentioned, like you're going to have to figure it out on your own, because you don't know anybody else, or you don't have anybody else, no resource to like tell you how this works or where this goes. I mean, and obviously Google and YouTube are rabbit holes, but eventually you'll get lost in all of that. But one of the other things I saw this morning, there was this woman speaking on, it was a podcast, it was an Instagram clip. Anyway, She said that if a flower doesn't bloom, do you blame the flower or its environment? And I was like, And like she went on to kind of describe it a little bit deeper. She said, like, would you get rid of the plant just because it didn't grow? Or are you going to check the soil? Are you going to check the light? Are you going to check the humidity? Are you going to check the water, et cetera? She kind of went through this whole list of stuff. But like, and I think that applies to us the same exact way. And a lot of us don't look at it that way. Just saying that, like, if I'm not blooming or growing into the person that I want to become, or this vision that I want to fulfill, like, I need to look around myself and see what it is that may or may not be holding me back from that growth that I want. Could it be a friend? Could it be a mentor? Could it be a relationship? We don't know. Obviously, everybody's situation is different, but like really think about, like, who are you talking to? Who are you listening to? What content are you watching? Like, what is your mind constantly thinking about or talking about? Like, is it positive? Is it negative? Like, assess all of those things.
Yeah, we were part of our SimBull training. We got accepted into a sports tech accelerator called Techstars. It's a huge accelerator network. They've got probably 500 companies a year that go through these programs. And basically, you work with a mentor for 12 weeks. They work with you on business development, on marketing, on mindset, on how to be an entrepreneur, how to be a founder. Right? You go through a lot of training on network and stuff like that. And that's actually one of the big things that they talked about when building your company. When building a company, I never really thought about it like this, but they came up multiple times in this program is one, you need to work really, really hard to build a company, right? You need to get the right talent. You need to have the right strategy, right? You need to execute it. You also need a lot of luck. You need the right environment around you. And what I mean by luck is the right environment around you, right? You need the right mentors. You need the right connections, right? All that stuff helps you build a successful company. You cannot build it on your own. You cannot build a successful company on your own, right? If I just put my head down and said, I don't need help from mentors, I don't need connections, I don't need a lead marketer, right? I don't need an engineer. I'm just put my head down. That's not the way to do it, right? You need a good environment to build a good product. And that's one of the things that program really taught me is building that environment, right? Okay, so we have this idea of a company that's a plant, using your metaphor. We have this plan that, if that doesn't work, are we just going to yell at the plant like, oh, this company sucks? Or are we going to go look at, hey, was it the right foundation, right? Did we get customer feedback? Did we have the right mentors? Did we have the right team to build the plant or to help grow the plant into what it could become? So it's a really good metaphor on it's not just about you, right? It's about the network that you surround yourself with, and you need to look externally sometimes to be able to make that next growth step.
No, 100%. And I think like the next hardest part about that is like, especially with like starting a company, is like, you're not going to see results right away. And I think that's also where like so many of us struggle now with this like instant gratification thing with like the internet and all this fancy technology now, is like we expect everything to happen right now. And like in some cases, obviously in the case of building a business, that's just not how it works. And like Ed Milet, he has a book called, I think it's The Power of One More. I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but he talks about a chapter in it called Busting Open the Piñata. And he tells this story about like, picture a group of kids at like a children's birthday party, and each kid walks up, takes their turn, takes their biggest swing at the piñata, and like no candy falls out. So every hit damages the piñata. Like figuratively, we know that every time somebody hits it, it takes a little bit of damage, but there's still no candy on the ground. So what do? The trick here is that it's like the invisible progress. And it's that like the first 5 or 6 kids go up, they hit the piñata, it doesn't break, they get discouraged because they went up and they gave it their all and it just didn't break. So now like the next kid comes up and he comes up, he hits it, boom, the candy falls out. But now everybody's happy because the rewards fell out, but they don't realize that every hit that was taken moved them this much closer to reaping the reward of breaking open the piñata. And that's where I just think like it's a cool metaphor that I wanted to kind of share, just because like it helped me kind of put things into perspective, that like every step you take is still moving you closer, whether you can see it or not.
There's that reminds me of, there's a book that I'm reading right now called The Tipping Point. It's by Malcolm Malcolm Gladwell, I think is his name. It's a really popular business book. I'd recommend for any young entrepreneur, The Tipping Point. I would highly recommend it. But it's this whole idea of when you're building something that you want to go viral, or you're building something that you want to be the next biggest company, right? You want to be Amazon, you want to be Apple, you want to be Google. You're building this company. He talks about this idea, and those are the extreme examples, right? There's examples for everything though, mid-level companies, small companies, this idea of the tipping point where you're putting all this work in to get up the hill. You're putting all this work in to move a boulder up a hill. And you look up and you're like, yeah, I'm not really close. That was a lot of work to get this one more step up, a lot of work to get one more step up, one more step up. And then he has this idea, it's a theory that he worked on called the tipping point. Once you get to the top of the hill and you get the ball rolling down the hill, it's like the floodgates open and you're a really successful company at this point. He said that how many people partway up that tipping point though stop and the ball goes back down to where it started and you lose all your progress. So this idea of incremental gain, even if you're not seeing the reward yet until you get to the tipping point, that's what you have to reach in order to be a successful, in this case, entrepreneur, but it could work in other walks of life as well.
No, I love that. I really do. I mean, it makes me think about like you ever notice how much easier your life can be, how much smoother things are when you're like not trying to do anything out of the norm? Like when you're not kind of pushing against other people's beliefs or the grain or whatever exactly you want to call it, how just like life seems so much simpler when you do things a certain way. To me, it's like the universe, if you will, like leaves you alone because you're acting the way that it wants you to act, where like it's when you step away from those habits and ideals and you start kind of working against what everyone else does, other beliefs and ideals, that like it gets really freaking hard. But like that's like it depends, like I don't want to go into like religion or anything, but how like the devil, the universe, whatever the thing may be, is pulling you back, it's pulling you down. And that's what I refer to as like the gauntlet. That's what I always call it. That like as soon as you start kind of building, like making progress against what everybody else believes, against what you're quote unquote supposed to be doing, life throws everything at you. And just all of a sudden, like anything that you can possibly think of is thrown at you to try and derail you from the progress that you're making. And sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say that's a great point. That hits so close to home because one of the things that we're in this sports gambling space, fantasy sports space, right? This sports tech space is where we're working. And once we started making some waves, right? We've got a couple thousand users now. We've got over 13,000 accounts, right? So we're starting to get some momentum, albeit small, right? DraftKings has 7 million users, but right, we're getting there. We're working our way up. But once you start having some success, right, then you start getting mentioned on Twitter and mentioned in Reddit threads. And there was this tweet that I remember that I read, they added us. They're like, at SimBull Exchange, dumbest idea ever. This is stupid. Nobody play it. And that actually really bothered me for a while. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is this stupid? Is this dumb? Like, should I be like spending my time on this? Is this what everyone else thinks? Like, and it really got to me. Like it actually, like I thought about that for way too long. And then I talked to a lot of people about it. I'm like, do you think this is a good idea? Like, do you think I should keep doing this? Like, do you have fun playing on the app? Like, what are your thoughts on this? And it really affected me. And then it started happening more and more. And it finally hit me that for every 1,000 people that you gain on the app, or in this case, our app, there's going to be at least 10 people that don't like it, right? Or 5 people that don't like it, or even 1 person that doesn't like it. And you can't let those negative people, or the people that didn't have a good experience, or the people that don't want you to succeed for whatever reason, whether it be they had the idea and you're the one doing it, or they want to be doing it, or they think you're disrupting sort of the norms, like you said, this idea of the universe and going with the flow, and you're disrupting that, and they don't like the disruption, right? They don't think that that's a good thing. You can't let those people either distract you or discourage you away from what you think is right and what you want to do and what you think is good for the people. So when you were talking about kind of those called negative Nancy's, right? The negative people that don't want to see you succeed, that want to see you fail for whatever reason in their lives, they want to see you fail. You can't let them discourage you from what you think is right and what you think is good and just for working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the way that I look at it is, if the universe, the devil, whatever you want to call it, is leaving you alone, something is wrong. But if all of a sudden all these things start happening that, like haters start coming out of the woodwork, whatever this stuff is, like all this negative momentum starts coming your way, it means you're doing something right. And it's like a weird thing there, but all of a sudden your friends start to disappear, your relationship gets rocky, maybe even ends. You might lose a family member. Like the possibilities are endless, but it's all to make sure that you earn that vision that you have within yourself. Like God, the universe, whoever sends you these challenges, those trials, if you will, to learn the lessons that you need in order to truly appreciate that position you want to be in. And I mean, I can truly attest to this, that like I was making some real progress on a business idea I had last summer. I didn't have it last summer. I was working on it last summer. Anyway, and like we had, like the ball was really starting to roll. We had met some really powerful people. We were getting into some rooms that honestly we had no business being in, but we were there.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden life just hit the fan. Like everything started to go wrong. And like, just like I said, like my relationship was tested. My family was tested. And right at the latter half of the summer, I did end up losing a family member. And that was all stuff that I was not at all prepared for. And like, I'll be completely honest with you, like I'd never really experienced anything like that. I'd never lost a family member that I was close to. I was not at all prepared for that event to happen. And it killed every ounce of momentum that I had. But I didn't know how to deal with that. That was all completely new. And I mean, it's not like, I don't want to go into like death because that's like a whole thing where we like, anyway, I'm not gonna, but like you can't really prepare for that in a weird way is all I was really trying to say. But long story short, I was just saying that like all of those things happened. And like, if we're going back to the tipping point metaphor, like my rock boulder, whatever you want to call it, rolled back down the hill. And I still haven't really built up that momentum again, but it did like help in certain ways where like there was a lesson that I needed to learn from all of those things, because I needed to understand a lot more about what I was actually doing. And we were in a state like what's the word? Like I was at a point where I was like saying yes to a lot of opportunities, which is great.
Yep.
But it also kind of blindsided me to some of the things that were going on at home. And that's where like I can now say that, you know, I'm a huge proponent of saying yes to opportunity, especially at a young age. But I can also say that, you know, I had kind of let some of that cloud what was most important, because I was so gung-ho on this idea and making it happen. And I was super excited and all that was great, but I wasn't watering the plants at home.
Yep.
So anyway, I guess what I'm just really trying to say is my biggest piece of advice to somebody who's out there going through kind of a similar thing right now is, one, don't give up, because it's extremely, extremely difficult to get that momentum back. But two, just don't forget the things that are most important to you.
Yeah.
Chase that dream, go get those wins, meet those people, get into those conversations, build that vision, like whatever it takes, do that, go get it done. Just don't lose sight of those that are most important to you.
Yeah, for sure. One of the mentors for SimBull that we met him a couple months ago. We meet every other Friday now, just to touch base for 30 minutes, talk about the business, talk about, you know, he has a background in some marketing stuff, some blockchain stuff that we're working on. So he's a great business mentor. But at the end of every phone call, he always asks, so, you know, put the business aside, how are you doing? Like, how's your personal life? You know, how are your relationships? Have you checked in with your, you know, have you called your mom, right? Have you checked in with your girlfriend, how she is? Have you checked in with your friends? Have you taken time for yourself outside of it? Because you said one of the easiest way to kill a business is to run down the founder, right? If you run down the founders to the point where they can no longer work on the business is dead. That's it. So in order for your founders to be energized and be able to work on it, their home life has to be good, right? Their relationships have to be good. They have to be in a solid state of mind. So I found that really interesting because whenever I get on a phone call with him, I'm like, go. All right, we need to do this. We need to execute this. We need to plan this. We need to strategize this. And then at the end, he's like, hey, take a step back. How are you? Right? You know, what'd you do this week for fun? Right? What'd you do to step back to enjoy life? Right? To water your plants at home for the sake of staying on that same metaphor. And I thought, and it's really good to have people in your life that do that, right? That are willing to have those serious conversations, to be able to have people that you can fall back on when stuff does go bad, and you need an extra leg to stand on or shoulder to lean on, that you have those people in your life to do that for you.
I really love that. It honestly made me realize that one of my current bosses at the company that I'm working with now actually we had a very similar conversation. We don't have it like every other week, but it was very much so like when I was being onboarded, we were talking about a bunch of different things, and we were kind of like ironing out the job description and doing some things like that, just making sure that everybody was kind of in alignment. And I don't remember 100% what it was about, but there was one thing that we were just having a conversation about, and I like voiced to him that like, I want to talk to my family first. I just want to like kind of like make sure everything's cool, whatever works. And he more or less said like the exact same thing. He's like, dude, like by all means, like take your time, talk with them, and then you come back to me. Like if he like said, if you don't get what you need at home, you're not going to be able to bring what I need at work. And it's, it was kind of a similar thing. So he like made it a big emphasis in that conversation to like make sure your things are taken care of at home. If you ever need more time for whatever to make sure things are good at home, take it, because then we're not going to get the best of you when you're here. So that was just a very similar conversation that I felt,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so underrated, right? Going back to these billionaires of like, yeah, working 20 hours a week, right? Sleeping 4 hours, I don't eat, blah, blah, blah. That's not normal for people, right? If you're in college watching this, you're a young entrepreneur, that is not like normal. That's not what people do to build successful companies. It might be what a few people do that work for them, and for whatever reason, there's this attraction to the energy that they emit and stuff like that. But that's not the route that every single person takes to their success, right? There's people that take time for their hobbies, right? They take vacations, right? They hang out with their friends, they play games, they go golfing, right? There is something to that, this idea that, oh, if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, that means you can't have any fun. No, I have fun building my company. I also have fun going out and playing basketball, right? Over lunch today, I took an hour off and I went to play basketball to get a workout in. That was something that it actually was super beneficial for the company, because I was by myself, just had music in, was playing basketball. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd never thought about this idea before. I need to get on the phone, when I get back in the office to talk about this. And the only reason it happened is because I cleared my mind and I took a step away. So this idea that you can't have any fun is I think, a myth, and people need to kind of get off that for a minute.
No, absolutely. I think that's a really great point to, I'm a huge proponent of changes of scenery. If you feel stressed or really anything at the time, like, especially if you work from home, leave the house, go do something, like just change up your environment for, even if it's just an hour, like you mentioned, just kind of give yourself an opportunity to decompress and put yourself in a situation that you can hear yourself think, and just let it all out. Voice it out, have that conversation with yourself, or even with somebody else. It doesn't have to be, just you.
Yep.
But like, I'm a huge proponent of, changes of scenery. I've had multiple like very beneficial trips that I've gone on just over the last couple of years that I feel like have really helped me rein in a perspective, like whether that be about business or life or whatever it is, like that really helped me kind of like fine tune like what's important, and also like what I want to pursue and how I want to go about it. I think that's extremely important. And I think, it's about time to start winding it down here. I know you got another meeting here coming up. So, in closing, one of the questions that I always love to ask the guests is, if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself during that ground zero moment, that ground zero period that we spoke about earlier on in the episode, what do you think you would tell yourself in that conversation?
Oh, that's a great question. Thought about something similar about that a few times. And I think there's two things that I would go back and say. One is, maybe three things. One is absolutely go for it. I don't regret anything, right? Right. Go for it 100%. Give it your all. Do what you want to do, because I think that's first important thing. Second is, it's going to be really, really hard, right? Like you said, when you're going to go through that door, be ready to work, right? And don't be discouraged by the work. Enjoy the work. Embrace it, right? If you're going to do this, you're going to have to enjoy it, working for long hours and stressing about it, and being the sort of the rock of the business, where it ultimately falls on my shoulders as founder and CEO. That whatever happens, it's on your shoulders. So be ready to work and be prepared for that. And three is really lean on the people around you. Right? That was the kind of end of the last 15 minutes of this conversation, really focused on that. When I first went into it, the first 6 months, I'm like, I got to do this all myself, right? I'm the one who quit. This is my job. I got to make it succeed myself. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to work. And I think that was fine. And I got to where I am, and it was a learning experience. But I think going back to tell myself, 18 months ago when I quit, you'd be like, hey, start building that network, start asking people for help, because they want to help you, right? If you genuinely have good relationships, people want to help you. They want to see you succeed. And the people that don't want to see you succeed, ignore them, right? Don't listen to them. Let them go. Find the people that want to help you, that want to see you succeed, and really lean on them. I think those are the 3 points that I would tell myself is go for it, be ready to work, and find people that want to help you succeed and really lean on them and ask them for help. And I think I would have sped up the process a lot 18 months instead of being an 18-month process. If I would have asked people for help the first 3 months, it probably would have cut that time down a little bit. But I think those are 3 important points when looking back on my journey, I think would have helped quite a bit going into it.
Absolutely. Hindsight is 2020. And I mean, I'm a huge proponent of networking. I wouldn't be in this chair today without the, connections that I've made. I went to school in Pennsylvania, had to meet somebody who lived in Canada, and then he inspired me to start all this. So, it's really crazy how things can happen. I mean, I've been in rooms and conversations that I never would have been in otherwise. So, I'm a huge, huge proponent of put yourself out there and just meet people, because you never know who somebody knows, and the conversations that you can have and connections you can make are endless. And, one of the things that I've definitely learned and that I try to push more than anything on this show is that there are people out there that want to help you. Just like you mentioned, I mean, there's so many young people out there that really refuse to reach out to some people because they're like, why in the world would they want to talk to me? Because they want to pay it forward. Somebody help them. There's a trickle effect. And even if not that, then they just truly want to help you. Everybody can remember being in your shoes, especially if they're a business owner right now. They remember getting started. There's a lot of people out there that want to help you. And I won't say everyone, just because there's some people, but for the most part, there's a lot of very generous and caring people out there that are willing to have a 15, 30-minute conversation with you and help you out with whatever that thing may be. So, didn't mean to kind of go off on a small tangent there, but that is just something that I'm super, super about, just that there are people out there that want to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask for it.
Yeah, but I think that's a really important point. I couldn't emphasize that more. Of asking for help from the right people is going to save you a ton of time, a ton of energy, and it'll help you a ton. Like you said, most of the people, at least in my network, in my experience, and it sounds like your experience, they're genuine people that want to help you, right? They've had some success, they've had some life experience, and they want to pay that forward for no other reason than you ask them. And they're like, I would love to tell you about my experience so that you don't either make the same mistakes or so that you can have similar success that I did. And the people that don't want to help you, they're losers, and don't listen to them, right? They're assholes, right? Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this. Those people, ignore them, right? 9 out of 10 of them are going to be genuine. Find those people. And I think it'll be really, really helpful for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And one small point I will just add to that real quick before we close it down is just that don't necessarily be afraid to gravitate towards the people that you meet that you do truly identify with. If you find somebody that, you get connected with through your kind of networking endeavors, and then you just find somebody that your conversations are just extremely powerful and they always ring true to you. And that's just somebody that you truly enjoy having those conversations with, and, that you identify with, you see yourself in, somebody you want to be like. Don't necessarily be afraid to gravitate towards that person and find ways that you can maybe get even closer and emulate that person and, emulate the success that they've made. In a lot of cases, you can continue that relationship even much further than just that one conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So anyway, thank you so much, man, for being here today. I really, really did enjoy our conversation. I knew after our little pre-call yesterday that this was going to be a fun one, so I definitely had a good time here today. For anybody who's listening in here today, where would be the best place for them to follow up and get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to, I'll just drop my email if that's okay. It's a public email. People can email me. It's Kenneth, KENNETH .Giles, GILES at SimBull, SIMBULL.app. Email's open. Feel free to reach out. If you're interested in SimBull, go to @SimBull Exchange on Twitter. Check us out there. DMs are open. So feel free to reach out there. Or if you're interested in joining the SimBull mobile app, www.simbull.com is our website. And then we'll also be in the App Store on July 25th. So if you're listening to this after July 25th, go to the App Store, search SimBull. We should pop up there if you want to join the stock market for sports. But if any of your listeners are interested in SimBull, interested in talking to me, following up, learning more about my story, feel free to reach out through email, through Twitter, on our website, figure out a way to get a hold of me and we can make it happen.
I love that, man. And congratulations, by the way. That's a little bit over a week and a half from a little bit over a week from where we are recording here today. So that's super, super exciting. Congratulations again, man. But thank you so much again for being here. Everybody that's tuned in here today, please go follow up with him. Really, really great guy, and he genuinely wants to help people if you couldn't tell already. So Kenneth, best of luck to you going forward. I'm really looking forward to seeing more about the app release and things in the coming days. But other than that, everybody, always remember, this is Dream Chasers Ground Zero, and there's nowhere to go from here. But thanks again, Kenneth.
Yep. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If you found value in any part of today's message and haven't already, please like and subscribe. For more episodes just like this one, click the link that will appear at the bottom of the screen in just a few moments. I really want to be providing as much value as possible for you guys, so please respectfully leave any questions or suggestions in the comments below, or feel free to leave me a comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Until next time, there's nowhere to go from here but up.